Hi, everybody. Continuing on with my series on the categories of verbal abuse. The next category is category number 13, ordering. Ordering denies the equality and autonomy of the partner. When the abuser gives orders, instead of asking respectfully for what he wants, he's treating his partner as if she were the glove on his hand, automatically available to fulfill his wishes. Following are some examples of ordering. Get rid of this. Get in here and clean this up. You're not going out now. Get this off of here. You're not wearing that. We won't discuss that. We're doing this now. Um, I would say that ordering is probably the most overt form of verbal abuse, in my opinion. I didn't really get ordering from my husband. Not in the sense like Breakfast Club comes to mind. If you remember Judd Nelson when he was imitating his father in the movie and he yells out, "Shut up, bitch, go heat me up a turkey pot pie." um, I would say that's really overt ordering. Um, my husband knew that that was a line with me. I wasn't going to respond to orders, even though he, talked to me horribly and yelled at me horribly and screamed horrible names at me when we were arguing, but he did not order me to clean this up and do this, do that. He would use more covert manipulation when he wanted me to do something for him. Like he'd be really nice to me when he wanted me to do something for him, whether it was a sexual favor or something else, like rubbing his back, rubbing his feet, fixing him something to eat, go get something for him because he was too lazy to get up off the chair. He realized pretty early on with me that um, he got he got more supply out of me by talking sweetly than being an overbearing, bullyish, bossy, trying to order me around. Um, there was one time though when we were having a fight and it turned into a really big fight. It was the sex fight. We had two very recurring fights in our marriage, and the first being the sex fight and the second being the cell phone fight. And the sex fight was probably the biggest one, and because he's the childish type of narcissist, extremely immature and just stuck as like in a teenage mindset. And of course, teenagers go through a very narcissistic stage in their brain development, which is actually quite normal for children and teenagers. They say that it's even healthy. They have to go through that stage of development. But when you're dealing with someone in their 30s or their 40s, it really grates on your nerves. And he was basically like, my therapist had explained it to me like this, like when a teenager, the, the place where the stage that their brain development is at, she said like sometimes you'll talk to them and you can have a perfectly normal civil conversation with them and you'll feel like you're talking to a 35-year-old. And then she said like another moment you'll have an interaction with them and they'll totally act like a 5-year-old and have a fit over something that's not that big of a deal. And so she said there's a lot of like peaks and valleys in behavior patterns of a teenager. And you just got to know, which person are you talking to? Are you talking to the 35-year-old, or are you talking to the 5-year-old? And I found, dealing with my husband, and tell me if you guys have had the same experience, you don't always know who you're dealing with. Like, sometimes you could have a normal civil conversation with them, and then other times it seemed like you were dealing with a child. Like, I want my way, and if you don't give me my way, I'm going to have a screaming, stomping temper tantrum, and I'm going to make you miserable and annoy you until you give me my way. And that's how it was dealing with him. It was like the equivalent of, like, sometimes during our arguments, it was like it would devolve into, basically, like, his behavior. He wouldn't literally say this, but his behavior would be like a little kid, like, you're a stupid poopy face and I hate you, and if you don't agree with me, you're stupid. You're a butthead. It would get, I mean, he didn't literally call me a butthead. You get the concept. It's just extremely, it's like arguing with a child. Like, just something as simple as having a difference of opinion on an issue that should not erupt the household into a screaming argument. Just, but I'm getting way off track here. So the one time he did take sort of an ordering tone with me, we were having the sex fight, and I was in the kitchen and I was picking up the leftovers from dinner and cleaning up in the kitchen, and he's like standing by the entrance of the kitchen, while I'm picking up the food, and he's yelling at me and berating me that there's something wrong with me because I don't want to have sex as much as he does. And I'm like, and at this point, like, this was much, like, this was years ago, so I had no clue, like, what I was dealing with. If I known, I wouldn't have wasted my breath. Had I known, I wouldn't have even been in the marriage. But I digress again. So he's like standing there berating me, and I'm trying to explain to him, women just aren't like that because it's biology. I can't control it. We're not testosterone dominant, so we're not going to have as high of a sex drive as you. And he's like telling me I'm just making that shit up and it's not true, and that if I really loved him and was really attracted to him, I would want it as much as he does. And finally, I was just like, look, I am not having sex with you tonight. I do not feel like it. I'm allowed to say no if I don't feel like it. And it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with me. I'm tired and I just don't feel like it. And he was having his little preschool temper tantrum. And I had on the counter a Tupperware that had peas and carrots in it. And he picked up this Tupperware container. And I think the plastic was a little bit dry rotted from putting it in the dishwasher. That's the only explanation I can think of as to how he did what I'm about to tell you. He picked it up and slammed it as hard as he could against the Formica countertop, and peas and carrots shot all over the kitchen. Like, I'm talking like 2 years later, I was finding dried up peas and dried up carrots, like shoved like under the refrigerator, or like dried, like stuck to something that was hanging on the refrigerator. And oh, it was a mess. And it was a lot, most of it went on the floor. I mean, this container just shattered into hundreds of pieces when he hit it against the counter, and peas and carrots were all over the place. And so I bent down and I started cleaning it up, and he's still like, yeah, we're still like arguing back and forth, and he's still yelling at me. And it was mostly him doing the talking, because usually what would end up happening was he wouldn't let me talk and he'd just shout over me. So he's shouting at me, and I'm on the, like, bending down on the floor, starting to pick up all the peas and carrots all over the place. And he says to me, "Yeah, that's right. Clean it up, bitch." And I just looked at him, and he even like kind of got a look on his face like he wasn't gonna, apologize, but he he stood there, and I could tell like he wasn't entirely comfortable with getting that overtly abusive. Like he could tell he had crossed a line, and that just I wasn't going to just put up with that. And he didn't apologize that night. He usually, it would take him like about a day before he'd apologize. Sometimes now, if he wanted sex that night, sometimes he would apologize like an hour or two later. But if it was a late night argument, a lot of times we didn't speak again until the next night because I would get up and go to work and he'd still be in bed. And, I'd come home and then he'd apologize. But really, as far as the topic, I'm getting way off topic here. The topic of ordering, and I know there are a lot of abusers out there because I've heard them before. This one guy I know, somebody I worked with. I was on the phone with him. He was on vacation, and he was talking to. He was with his wife, and I was asking him a question about work, and she was in the background, and she started vacuuming, and he he told me to hold on for a second, and he yelled at her, "I'm on the phone. You can't do that right now." Like that is how he talked to his wife. So I didn't get like that degree of ordering, but I got like a very covert type of ordering, and I'm going to explain it like this. And I don't know if this is actually clinically a thing, but I'm just going to explain how I felt in my situation. Once I experienced a few of these explosions early on, or realized how much he was going to annoy me until I would have sex with him, or until I would do whatever it was, whatever favor he wanted from me. After a while, and I couldn't handle the explosion. I never could handle loud yelling like that. And it got to a point where like I started to just appease him. Whatever he wanted, I would just do it, like, because I didn't, and sometimes, like, especially with the sex thing, if I really didn't feel like it, I really wanted to say no sometimes. And I would still oblige him anyway because I felt like I don't want to take the chance. Because sometimes I could say no and he would be okay. He'd be disappointed, but on that particular night, maybe he didn't have the energy to have an explosion and have a big screaming argument. But most of the time, I didn't want to take the chance if I couldn't really like feel out his mood, you know. If I thought there was any kind of possibility that me saying no would turn into a 2 to 4 hour argument about how there's something wrong with me, and I don't want it enough. If I really loved him, I would be all over him all the time. Um, so if you want to consider just his aura a covert form of ordering, because basically most of the time all he had to do was, you know, let me know whatever way he decided to let me know that night that he was ready to have sex. I pretty much gave in most of the time because I did not want to take the chance of getting in an argument with him or being annoyed the entire night until I had sex with him. And I know I'm talking about sex a whole lot. I don't want you to get the impression that that's all we ever fought about. We had lots of other arguments on many different topics. Some of them big and some of them very, very insignificant. But the sex fight was a big recurrent thing with him. He was, and a lot of narcissists are like this, he took it so personally if I said no. And I would tell him point blank, it's got nothing to do with you. I don't feel like it. It's got nothing to do with you. It's got nothing to do with my feelings or my love for you. I just don't feel like it. Okay? Doesn't mean I don't like sex. I would get that one a lot too. You must not like sex. It got to a point where I actually asked my doctor, could there be something wrong with me? Could it be my blood pressure medicine? That's nothing. I was on blood pressure medicine for hypertension at age 29. Yeah. At that point, we had been married for 3 years. So I asked my doctor, could it be my medication? Could it be my birth control pills? I heard that, sometimes those can lower sex drive because you're taking large doses of synthetic female hormones that's bound to, reduce anything that's going to reduce your testosterone levels, going to reduce your sex drive. And that could have been part of it. But and actually Patricia Evans talks about it in the book that I'm reading from. She mentions specifically that one of the side effects of these types of relationships is it kills your sexual desire. You're not going to be sexually attracted to someone who belittles and insults you, or who could blow at any minute and you don't know when it's going to happen. Like, that kind of fear kind of has that effect on the sex drive, I would say. So yeah, I mean, one time I asked the doctor. He gives me this prescription for this testosterone cream. He tells me to put this stuff on my lady parts, and it's supposed to stimulate, down there, and I guess make you want it. So he tells me, put it on like once a day, just a little bit, and see if that helps. So I get this stuff. It was like $60 for this cream, and I get it, and I start using it. I used it for, I think, like maybe like a week. I don't even know if I lasted 2 weeks. It made me so hypersensitive down there that even if I just wore like pants, like slacks, if I'd go to work, and if I was wearing pants, I would sit down in my chair at my desk, and if the crotch of my pants like pressed up against me, I saw stars. Like, it wasn't hypersensitive in a good way. It was hypersensitive in a super, super painful way. And so I stopped using it. And it really didn't increase my sex drive. It really didn't. And so the next time I went to the doctor, he asked me about it, and I told him, yeah, I stopped using it after like a week. So, because it was painful. It was making it painful to sit down if I was wearing pants. So I can't work like that, I need to be able to wear pants. And he said, that means that you don't need it. There's nothing wrong with you. He said he had like over 400 patients in his practice, and he said he could only think of, off the top of his head, he could only think of maybe a handful who actually wanted sex more than their partners did. So he said, there's nothing wrong with you, okay? You're normal. So I went home and told him that, and of course he didn't believe it. Which is also very common with the narcissist. When you put facts in front of their faces. You could have, the greatest biologist on earth, and he would still deny that is real. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and cut this one off here because I'm getting tired. So have a good night, everybody. And I'm gonna finish the categories. The last category is the biggest one. The last category of verbal abuse is abusive anger. That was a very prominent one in my marriage, and Miss Evans devoted an entire chapter on that one. So I'll be working on that this weekend because the kids will be at their dad's house this weekend. So I'll get that done and get that out. And thanks again for listening.